Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri, 93.9 The Eagle, 950 KWS. I'm John Marsh. Randy Tobler, Stephanie Bell taking a day off, but in with us from ComoBuzz.com, our buddy Mike Murphy. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, John.
How are you, sir?
I'm just fine.
Man, a late night last night at Council Chambers.
I fell asleep. I went home and was watching it on TV because it was a good night not to be there. And it's so much easier to watch it on TV sometime in the comfort of your own chair. The problem is I passed out somewhere along the line and had to catch up this morning.
Been there, done that.
Producer Hannah along with us this morning as well. Good morning. Hey, we had a nice time last night at Cole County Lincoln Days, didn't we?
We did. We got to see lots of Wake Up family members. And, John, did you hear I even squashed my quote-unquote beef with Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe?
That's right. He did a fine job of remembering your name last night.
Yeah, I got a pretty cool challenge coin from him. So I believe the words out of his mouth when I gave him a hard time were, are we still not over this? And then, we duked it out. So all is well. All is well.
When we talked to Lieutenant Governor, he informed us he would have come on this morning, but he was doing some campaigning and was headed off to Branson as we speak. Hey, 6:35, Chris Arps will join us and his unique take on the national political scene, and Nikki Haley making some rumblings in South Carolina ahead of the vote there. We'll talk to Chris about that. 7:10, Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater has an update on the conference center development for the capital city. And we'll talk to Callaway County State Rep Jim Schulte, border security, and some action in the Missouri House. But back to Mike. Wow. Columbia Council, talk to us about the new ordinance that's worded a little differently than some of these about being a safe haven for LGBTQ Missourians.
Well, at the end of the day, people are the big concern is how can you say you're not going to obey state law or supersede state law and things like this, which is, unconstitutional. It doesn't work that way. The city attorney, the legal staff, they wrote a document, it's an ordinance, that states a lot of really just platitudes about what they believe about this gender-affirming health care, and then declares that basically they're not going to enforce any state laws that infringe upon the LGBTQ community and their rights, as they call them, or they're going to give them the lowest priority. So, it really activated the LGBTQ community. There was, literally hundreds of them there last night, or more than 100, 60 some spoke. It went on for hours. But basically, this is just a political response to the laws that came out of Jeff City that banned, it will ban when it becomes effective, gender-affirming care, mostly for young people. This is the city kind of fighting back or hollering back, and they were prompted, of course, by their citizens that we're not going to, these laws don't mean much to us, we don't agree with them, and we're not going to enforce them. All done in a way, though, that keeps them from getting any kind of legal trouble. Because at the end of the day, it's not being done here anyway. There's nothing to enforce or not enforce. Yeah. And at the end of the day, also, there's nobody really involved with the city who would be involved in enforcing any of this anyway.
Well, and that was my question. Yeah. Like, how do you publicly announce that you're not going to be enforcing a certain set of laws and not get in trouble for that? My brain isn't putting two and two together.
Well, it happens all the time if you think about it. So a police chief might send out a memorandum to his officers that says, we're not going to write tickets for expired license plates. So you see where it can go from there. Mm-hmm. It might be we're not going to enforce immigration at the border or our immigration laws at the border. So often these laws are disobeyed or not enforced all the time based on administrative judgments. And this law being, it's really a political statement coming out of Jeff City anyway. This is just another political statement back. I really hope it ends here and suspect it will, but I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see.
Mike, my question on this was, how does this compare to what they did up in Kansas City with that 12-1 vote, where they used the magic phrase sanctuary city that they put on the books there. Columbia Council kind of danced around that phrase.
They did. They pivoted away from that at the last minute. Everybody's still using the same term. What Columbia did was they used the essence of that ordinance, and it was brought to them by these this young socialists from Mizzou socialists.
Which is a real club, by the way, on campus.
Democratic socialists, but yes, absolutely.
They very much used the essence of that and a lot of the wording of that, but the city staff rewrote it to sort of neutralize it. They took out the word sanctuary city, and they just said they're declaring a safe haven. And basically what the city attorney did, which is really what her job is, her job at the end of the day is to keep the city out of legal trouble. And she wrote this to make all of the statements they want to make, to appease the people who brought this issue to them, but to very much steer them out of any kind of legal trouble that might come from bumping up against state laws.
But I would add something very important here. More than anything else, I hope the listeners on both KWS and 93.9 The Eagle take a look at my story, and I know Mike's covered it extensively, John. 939theeagle.com, KWS.com. I link to the actual ordinance in my story. You can see it, and I'll update that this morning. But I can tell you from watching some of the testimony last night, Mike watched it too, some of these people did not read the ordinance. I mean, Mike, they didn't.
Wow, shocking, right?
I would say most didn't.
I mean, because they were saying stuff that I know was exactly, they were saying stuff, and Hannah had a good point, saying stuff we know is not in there, but it was still very emotional. And we also should point out there were so many people to testify last night, 3 hours, and I was watching as best I can. I mean, one person after the other. And by the way, not everybody was for it. There was a grandmother here in Columbia, Bonnie, that spoke against it. Some others as well. Don Waterman voted against it. But a lot of Mizzou students, by the way, were there to support it. Just that went 3 hours. Forget the rest of the council meeting. And they had people literally lined up out the door, to the point, Mitch Kaminsky said it on TV last night. He's absolutely correct. The mayor had to have some people leave the room and go to conference rooms because she was worried about a violation of the fire code. I can't remember a meeting where you had that. Well, no, it literally, because
what a crowd.
I mean, I would say I can't think of anything that's had that much of a crowd that had to have people leave the room for a fire code. Not anything in recent memory. It's probably happened. I know it probably has because I've been there, but I don't remember anything like this.
Brian, you've been covering this angle for a long time in Columbia, and Mike as well. The whole angle of this, it seems kind of moot to people looking at it from the outside in, especially in some of our other communities in mid-Missouri, because when the folks at the Capitol in Jefferson City lined out these laws, I mean, MU Healthcare was right at the front of it and said, we will comply with state regulations.
That's exactly, you're right. And John, you are correct on that. And they did. And of course, they took some criticism. There were some protests at the university about that. But the state law bans gender affirming health care treatments. And, the biggest thing that it's more symbolic. Mike's absolutely right. It's carefully written not to actually conflict or break any state laws. But I would say, John, the biggest thing about it from last night is the common theme from speaker after speaker was that one person said this is about basic human decency. I heard that several times. And then a couple people said flat out, if this did not pass, they and other LGBTQ residents were going to move, were considering, Mike, you heard this, they were considering moving. They and their families were going to move, that they didn't feel, essentially they wouldn't feel safe if this didn't pass. So it was emotional. The mayor had to remind people at the beginning not to heckle anyone, but from what I could tell, watching it, monitoring the video monitor, seemed to be respectful. But
and we got a text from listener John at 874-9390, and he says 3 hours spent on an alphabet soup sanctuary city ordinance while they can't handle upgrading utilities and fixing roads. It's not a serious government.
Well, I totally agree that they could have handled this differently, but at the end of the day, it's an issue that brought out, it's an issue that filled the council chambers. So to say it's not important, you'd have to explain, we have all these infrastructure, we have an enormous amount of issues that aren't getting handled that nobody's paying any attention to. This issue here I think it crystallized a statewide issue. The whole gender affirming movement, laws restricting that came out of Jeff City. The resolution, which just offers a bunch of platitudes, is almost secondary to a group of citizens who feel marginalized, if not attacked. Mm-hmm. They describe it as hate. It was like a rally. They showed up and they pounded their fists a little bit and said, "We will not be dehumanitized here. We will not be marginalized. We are citizens like everybody else, and we demand to be recognized as such." And the Columbia City Council decided to go along with it. People wonder how you can write an ordinance, but let me give you just a couple. I don't have it in front of me, but they write in things. It's more like their beliefs, like gender affirming healthcare has been proven to be evidence-based and medically necessary and life-saving. Somebody could argue that, I'm sure, but they're stating that as their facts for doing this. The city desires to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all of its citizens. Gender affirming healthcare improves well-being. These types of statements, and then followed up with the essence of it all is, therefore, we're just not going to participate. We're not going to enforce to the level of what the law will allow. We are not going to participate in enforcing any of this business.
Yeah, and that is something, Mike, John, and Hannah, that you've hit a couple of the highlights. I'm going to read one more, very short, but this, again, is a statement that is in the bill that passed last night. One sentence, folks. Whereas, quote, as a city that strives to respect and celebrate its diversity, the City Council affirms that being LGBTQ is not a disorder, disease, illness, deficiency, or shortcoming, and commits to finding ways to improve social outcomes for LGBTQ Columbians. And then they go on. For the gentleman who texted, Mike, all of us here in this room have repeatedly reported on infrastructure and on utilities. But when those issues come up, people don't show up at the council meetings. They don't. No, I'm not saying they don't show. A handful show up. So people are interested in this. It is newsworthy, but, it's just for whatever reason, the infrastructure and sewers, it just doesn't get that much interest.
No, it's all about social issues nowadays. That's when Nick Nose comments that he blamed this on state lawmakers, and I agree with him to the degree that that's why this is happening. But also, the city embraced this and brought it upon themselves, and they could have just
Looking ahead to March 5th, quote, South Carolina is a really rough state. It's a very Trump-friendly state. Our hope is that Nikki Haley can make it respectable in South Carolina and move on to Super Tuesday.
Wake Up Mid-Missouri, John Marsh, Stephanie Bell, and Randy Tobler off. Mike Murphy, ComoBuzz.com in with us, along with producer Hannah and Brian Hauswirth. Yeah, Nikki Haley using the closing days of South Carolina primary matchup. But like the soundbite said, Donald Trump getting support, I think, from all of that state's top elected leaders and all but one of their congressmen there. But Nikki says she's going to stick it out and outlasted, a dozen also ran so far, meaning she says she's in it for the long haul.
We'll see, I guess.
You heard about the Super PAC and the amped up fundraising that could, keep her going despite the earlier losses, to Donald Trump. It's
as soon as it becomes,
I don't know.
As soon as it becomes clear, which I think it may already be, that Trump isn't going to be in jail or close or facing some conviction, which seems further and further implausible at the moment, I don't see how she's anything but cooked at this point.
Yeah, it is one of those deals, and it's like every time we hear, there's a big announcement coming down from Nikki Haley, we all are like, well, here it is. This is it. And it's like, nope, I'm in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Come heck or high water.
Pretty soon the money will stop.
Yeah, and she's got this state of the race, as she's calling it, this afternoon. And when I first saw this announcement, exactly what John just said, all over Twitter, there was speculation that she was going to finally announced that she was dropping out, but she has since came out and said, no, guys, I'm not dropping out. So I'm curious to see what her take is on this, as the latest polls have shown Trump ahead by 30 plus points.
Insurmountable.
Yeah.
That's what doesn't make a lot of sense at this point, but maybe she's got a plan we just don't know about it. Or maybe she's just holding out hope that Trump somehow stumbles in a big way.
Well, polls have been wrong before, too.
30 points is a lot to make up. Yeah.
Well, and Nikki, in defense of Nikki, she plays it tough with her, her UN ambassador card and saying she'll put the hammer on the NATO countries to carry their own weight and all. And it's like, okay, if you're there to do that is the big argument. And it certainly isn't looking like it. If you, like Mike said, a 30 point poll numbers.
There's probably a long
Trump.
game for her that, after this or as a result of all of this, she's obviously brilliant at what she does to be even in this position. So I don't think she's going to go away. It's probably more about managing the long game for her at this point. And it's still relatively early. Give Trump some room. He's been a little reckless, so she might very well benefit from that yet before it's over.
It'd be interesting to see. It's not a complete, no deal on her ending up in the administration somehow.
Sure.
Maybe a long shot, but not the end game, I guess. Interesting comments by Fannie Willis's dad on keeping cash around the house. we got the second in command this morning, but we'll make do, right, Chris?
The B team, I think they call it.
Chris, I know you're like us. You were watching the Fannie Willis stuff down south and all, and then her dad came to testify, and they were trying to do sort of the money trail thing and try to set timelines with she and her boyfriend and and all that. His line was, not paraphrasing. I mean, and he's an attorney. He's not, just some guy off the street. He said,
Last time that I have used cash to pay for anything, it's usually on my debit card. Look, we all watched Fannie Willis last week in her testimony, and it was an absolute disaster. We had the monitor on in the studios, and we had the sound out. And just watching her body language, how uncomfortable she looked, how defiant she looked, it was an absolute disaster. And no one in their right mind believes that her and her boyfriend went on these exclusive trips and he paid him back with cash. No one believes that. Her father is an attorney, as you said. He came of age in the civil rights era and during segregation. And that generation, whenever their feet are being held by the fire, the first thing that they always hearken back to is racism. So it was kind of par for the course. The case looks bad. She may be disqualified, and I think that's their own fault. Not the lawyers questioning her.
Well, and Stephanie was telling us last week that, lawyers and attorneys make the worst witnesses.
And we saw that, definitely.
Yes.
I was really surprised for someone that's a prosecutor and does this for a living. She was terrible on the stand. A lot of her supporters liked it, said that she was a defiant, strong black woman. I think she just hurt the case more than anything. And we all know that you get defiant, you get defensive, usually when you're doing something wrong or lying.
well, it was a take, yeah. And Wade said, he booked their vacations on his credit card because she would limit her transactions for safety reasons. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Identity theft or what? It just didn't play well.
Yeah, it didn't. I mean, look, she's been in the spotlight the last 6 months or so because of this case that she's brought against President Trump. But he tried to make the situation that she was a celebrity and they can't go anywhere without being noticed. Look, if 100 people were around and they saw Fannie Willis, maybe 1, 2 would recognize who she is. Their excuses just don't fly, and they have put their own case in jeopardy.
Chris Arps in with us this morning at ChristopherArps.com.
Hey, Chris, what do you think about George Soros buying Odyssey and 235, something like that, radio stations?
Well, it's frightening. I mentioned this on my Facebook page last week that George Soros, an avowed leftist who's a billionaire, is now going to have control over 200 radio stations, the second largest radio network in this country. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's happening during an election year. He bought $400 million worth of Odyssey's debt, so he's basically going to control this company. Now, on a personal, professional level, I'm glad for it because one of our competitors in St. Louis is owned by Odyssey. So, I'm kind of mixed emotions.
Do you know
the
how
segment
many
kind of writes itself there, right?
Do you know how many he has in Missouri? There's one in Kansas City too, right? But there's only a couple in Missouri. Is that right?
Oh, no, they own our competitor, 97.1 in St. Louis. They own the KMOX 50,000-watt blowtorch, and they own 3 music stations. So they own 5 stations in St. Louis.
Oh, my.
KMOX and 97.1 FM.
Yeah, it's a good dozen between.
Did I mention 97.1 FM?
I think you did.
Conservative talk station? Okay.
All right. Don't make me hang up on you.
Yeah, DAF and Kansas City and some of the powerhouses up there, KMBZ and all. Yeah, that's like a dozen or so stations that Odyssey owns in Missouri. Chris, what's on your radar in the St. Louis market this week on the show?
Well, that's a good question. Probably one thing that I'm looking at is crime in St. Louis is out of control. The mayor has been talking about crime, some of the things that she wants to do about it. We had another horrific incident in St. Louis. You remember last year the volleyball player from St. Louis who was here in town for a tournament. A driver hit her. She ended up losing both of her legs. Well, we had a tragic case last week where a mother and daughter were in town to attend the Drake concert. A young man in his early 20s was driving 70 miles an hour down a downtown street, hit both of them. Both of them were killed. The mother was killed there at the scene. The daughter died later in the hospital. So it's just kind of another instance of crime just being out of control. Our police department is at least a couple of hundred officers down, so they don't have the resources and the manpower needed to patrol our streets. And St. Louis, like Kansas City, is just becoming a dangerous place.
What is your take on Gabe Gore's performance as city circuit attorney so far?
I think the biggest indication that Gabe Gore is doing a good job is that you don't hear his name in the newspaper on the news every day. He's plodding away. You know, there was a big, huge backlog of cases because of Kim Gardner. He is dwindling those cases down with help from the Attorney General's office, helping with some of those cases. But I think the fact that you're not hearing about him every single day in the news, he's putting his head down and doing the job that needs to be done to keep the citizens of St. Louis City and our region safe.
Chris, have you been following this sanctuary city ordinance that was approved last night in Columbia?
No, I haven't, but it doesn't surprise me. You know, usually in left-leaning communities, they are in support of that. You would think they wouldn't because of what we've seen with the illegal immigration and how they've overran Chicago and Denver and in New York, and those leaders there are crying out for resources. They don't know where to hold these people. So I hope that this ordinance was to remove the sanctuary.
No, this was about
Columbia.
this was creating a safe haven for the LGBTQ community in response to the gender affirming care legislation that came out of Jeff City last summer.
So Columbia wants to be a place where children can be mutilated and experimented on with no repercussions. That's what they're advocating for.
They declared as much last night, 6-1.
Yeah. Yeah,
Chris sounds real surprised.
What do you expect? No, I'm not surprised at all. You know, remember what Michael Savage, the great talk show host, he had a book that I used the title of it always, and it was that liberalism is a mental disorder.
That sounds like a Savage book for sure. What about you paying attention to the mayor of Kansas City and the whole angle on the thugs comment, and they're pushing back against that and all in light of the shootings and the death of the one woman in connection with the Chiefs parade and rally? Your takeaway on that, Chris?
Yeah, you know, we know that liberal African Americans, they always want to use race and always try to use dog whistles that they say the words like thug is a dog whistle that means race. Look, if you listen to any rap music of today and of yesterday, the word thug is glorified. You know, Tupac had thug tattooed on his body. So for them to say that this is some dog whistle demeaning African Americans is completely crazy. You know, in another related note, one of the state representatives there, Mary Manlove, I think that's her name. There's a bill in the legislature that's a crime bill, and she was against the fact that police dogs can be used to apprehend people, and she said she wants to curtail that because it harkens back to scenes in the 60s and everything when dogs were being sicked on black people, which is just an absolutely ridiculous statement. I could see if the dogs were only being sicked on black people. They're sicked on anyone who is running for the police, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. So it's just a ridiculous statement.
I thought there was an interesting bill, and they brought it up at Cole County Lincoln Days, one of the candidates last night. And it's a bill that makes you scratch your head going on at the Missouri Capitol. I guess to paraphrase it, they're focusing on if you have expired tags and all that stuff. But basically, the bill, if it went into place, was if your vehicle registration and all wasn't up to date, you take it to your corner mechanic or try to get an inspection from him. He says, sorry, we ran your numbers and all, and you're not currently registered, so we can't work on your car. You know,
and when I first read that, I was like, you know, it kind of overkill. And, people are ticked off when you see people with expired plates. They basically didn't pay their taxes while we're paying our taxes. But the article that I read in the Post-Dispatch, one of the mechanics that's advocating for this made a good point. If you have expired plates, that means that your car has not been safety tested. And some of these mechanics are worried that if they put a battery or work on your car and you go out and have an accident or something happens, that they could be maybe held liable for that. I think that's a reasonable fear. Besides the fact that these people aren't paying their taxes, they haven't had safety inspections on their car.
And that was part of the argument when we saw Missouri in their long battle to join the majority of other states and eliminating the safety inspections for vehicles, except in some certain areas. And that was the argument that was made, well, somebody's going to be liable. And they said, well, the law of averages says if you don't maintain your car, it's going to break down. You won't be out in traffic in it.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you guys this. I'm going to turn questioner to you guys. What's the oldest expired temporary plate that you've seen? Mine goes back to 2021.
Wow.
Anytime we ask this question on the show, Chris, Wake Up family members text us photos of plates that have probably been expired since the pandemic.
Oh, we've had some doozies.
Yeah, I thought about taking a picture of one the other day. It was only a year, but it amazed me how good a shape the certificate still was on the back of his car with a year old.
I think the oldest one we've seen is 2017 recently, maybe.
And it really ticks you off when you see somebody driving some luxury, expensive vehicle with temporary plates, and it's like, well, if you couldn't afford the taxes on the car, why did you even buy it, So you look kind of bad when you're trying to, look like you're affluent and you didn't pay your taxes.
comobuzz.com. Producer Hannah, Brian Hauswirth. And just as importantly, coming up, Thursday and Friday, our Miracle for Kids Radiothon, our 18th annual Miracle for Kids Radiothon, as we team up with MU Healthcare's Children's Hospital and help out some families and some kids who really need your help. And boy, oh boy, we hope to break some records this year, don't we, Producer Hannah?
Oh, yeah. Last year was a record-breaking year, and I don't know about you, John, but that felt pretty good. And I think I'm chasing that high again. So I'd like to see us break the record again. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we're getting close. Grand opening of the new CMN Children's Hospital, and we're going to be back at our location in Columbia in our own studios, teaming up with all of our buddies and all of the families and the kids. And boy, oh boy, for those of us who've been involved with CMN and the Miracles for Kids Radiothon all these years, man, it's fun to watch the success stories, and the vast majority of kids are right in that and are growing up to be not only big kids, but young adults.
Yeah, and if you're concerned that you're going to miss this on Thursday and Friday, you can actually go to either of the radio station's websites, 939theeagle.com, kwos.com, and you can't miss it. You click the picture of Truman the Tiger in a dump truck right there at the top of the page, and it'll pull up the link to donate. A1 Containers has made it possible to donate early this year. So there's a handy-dandy little link. You could go ahead and get your donation counted if you're concerned about missing it later this week.
Well, it's one of those things, too, and we point out every year on the Miracles for Kids Radiothon, your donations stay local. They stay to buy life-saving equipment and the program needs at MU Healthcare Children's Hospital. This is just about to open its doors, but be assured the bucks you donate stay right here in mid-Missouri.
Yeah, they usually bring in Link the therapy dog, a golden retriever who, his whole job is to go around the hospital and, basically love on the kids and let them, pet him and things like that. It's really calming for them, and it seems so simple, but it makes a big impact. So that's just one of the many services that the dollars raised go to support. It's things like Link the therapy dog, music therapy's big, things like that to keep the kids entertained while they're unfortunately stuck in the hospital, which can be not so fun.
Yeah, and gosh, what family in mid-Missouri probably doesn't have somebody in their extended family, a mom or a kid or both, who've gone through the program and have come out the backside with flying colors, but the outcomes wouldn't have been so positive if it wasn't for CMN and MU Healthcare's Children's Hospital.
Yeah, I know we've had coworkers here at Zimmer before, trying for one more child to add to their family and ending up with triplets and, suddenly finding yourself in need.
We're talking about you, Jeremy Washington.
And finding yourself in need of the hospital services. So it can happen to anyone.
We're good to go. Coming up Thursday. taking the day off. Mike Murphy in with us from ComoBuzz.com. Mr. Murph.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah here with us as well.
Help, I'm surrounded by news guys this morning.
And Brian Hauswirth. We've got Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater in with us. We're going to talk a little bit about the proposed developer for Jefferson City's proposed hotel, conference center, new parking garage and all. But first of all, Ron, had a good time, saw a lot of folks, got a lot of good information last night at Cole County's, for lack of a better term, Lincoln Days.
Well, thank you. Good morning. It's good to be with you. We had a great time last night. We had a lot of politicians, obviously a lot of people running for statewide office and local office, and we invited them all in. They were very polite and hung around. We had a fairly long program because we had a speaker, Scott Fahn, and he did a great job. I think he previewed it on your program yesterday. But more importantly, we recognized and celebrated our Congressman Blaine Luetkemeyer. There was a very nice video that I had seen over the weekend, and Jonathan Ratliff, who works with the congressman, said, could we show this video? And I said, absolutely. And it's essentially his colleagues in Washington just saying nice things about how great he is to work with. So it was fun to be able to celebrate his term in office. We're going to miss him. And, as I said last night, it was just kind of automatic. It's filing time and our congressman's going to file. And then when he put the word out that he was retiring,
exactly,
it takes a gasp out of you for a minute. But it was a great night. We had a good crowd and a fun time.
Well, pat on the back to Blaine Luetkemeyer. Some of us go way back to Blaine's days when he was a Missouri State representative, and then he moved on. The governor appointed him director of tourism for a term and all. And Blaine's been around the block. I've even teased him on the air when he was the manager of the St. Elizabeth Crawdads baseball team. So,
oh, wow. Well, it's just so nice to have a member of Congress from your community or close by. I mean, they shop here, they go to restaurants here, and it's just nice to have a congressman. So we're going to miss him, but life moves on, and we're going to have to decide who fills that seat now.
Well, and Mayor, can I also say that, we were contemplating at our table last night, filming, just how quickly you guys were churning all of the candidates in who wanted to speak. I think that other Lincoln Days should be inspired because it was beautiful. There were a lot of speakers, but you guys had them, whipped into shape. They were, nobody really went too far over their time, and it was nice.
Yes, it was, and thanks for saying that. Yes, the candidates were very cooperative. It was interesting. We were kind of watching up there, and Taylor Burks was exactly 2 minutes. I mean, it clicked, and he went down. Some were shorter than their 2 minutes, and we had a couple that went over, but they don't get a lot of chance to talk to our members, and people need to see them. So we were pretty generous, but you're right. Most of them were very good, and we appreciated that.
Ron, it's a thing with you, and I think folks, may have remembered you from the very early days we had you on the radio. We were so involved in national Republican politics, and you were our reporter, reporting in with us from the national convention a couple times, you and former Jefferson City Mayor Eric Strump. And I guess the question to you is, before we get into talking about the conference center and all, what's your feel for the upcoming election and all of turnout, and what are you hearing from folks just around mid-Missouri?
Well, I'm concerned about what 24 is going to be. I mean, I think we have, as Republicans, fumbled the ball occasionally, and there's some issues on the national level. I was talking to a few of the candidates last night about their concerns in running. Can Republicans hold the majority in the U.S. House? Hopefully pick up the U.S. Senate, and certainly the presidency is very important for the whole. I mean, that kind of sets the tone of the message and has the bully pulpit. And I think there's concerns in Republican circles of being able to maintain some of those majorities. I mean, I think, as you heard from Scott Fahn last night, kind of a warning to statewide Republicans that supermajorities can disappear if you lose sight of governing and doing what needs to be done for the state of Missouri. So I hope the party takes a hard look. We had the state Lincoln Days in Kansas City over the weekend. There were a lot of people in. There was a good crowd. And I mean, I think there's leadership starting to say that we have got to get back to governing. We've got to get back to doing what's right for the state of Missouri. Last I checked, there's a filibuster that went all night long, and it was still going as of when I checked just a little while ago. And we have not started out good in the Missouri Senate to get the work of the people done. I get the message that some are talking about, but when you talk to just regular people out and about, they want limited government, but there are some things that government needs to do, and we need to get on about the business. So, long answer to your question. I'm concerned more nationally because the numbers are so close. There's only a 3-seat majority in the U.S. House. Senate obviously is in, a 1 or 2 seat majority the other way. There's some opportunities maybe to pick that up. The presidential race is going to be a toss-up no matter what folks say. I mean, it's just always there are a lot of factors. Statewide, we're probably going to lose some of the margin. I mean, there's still super majorities on both sides. So, I don't think that's going to be a problem as far as who's going to control the legislature. But trends are not looking good, and I think we as a party need to take some responsibility and do some things differently.
Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
John, thank you, and great job hosting this morning, and Mike as well. Mr. Mayor, 2 quick things I do want to point out. The Senate filibuster continues as we speak. Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman's initiative petition reform bill is being filibustered, and I was monitoring that in addition to the council meeting last night. It is still going to the point where she was asking if she needed to go put on new clothes. One senator wanted to inquire of her early this morning. I think it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and the sergeant of arms had to go get her because she is in her office. But they've been going all night, so that is the Democrats are filibustering, and they continue to be. I know John wants to get into the conference center huge, but another big issue is for Jefferson City and Columbia is Columbia Regional Airport. I've got a story up, KWS.com, 939theeagle.com. I encourage people to look at it. Just put it up. I've confirmed Columbia Regional Airport Manager Mike Parks, Mr. Mayor, is heading to Arizona next week. He and Stacey Button will be talking to American about Charlotte. They're also going to be in more talks with United. He can't say a lot, but we know Charlotte's on the agenda. We know they're going to be talking with United. How big is that airport and those flights for Jefferson City and Cole County, sir?
That airport is huge for us, and the more that they can expand, it creates opportunities for us here in Jefferson City. And we are so fortunate. I mean, we have the 6th busiest airport in the state here in Jefferson City, but we don't do commercial traffic. I mean, there's a lot of state traffic, obviously, the governor's planes, the National Guard, many companies have planes here, but we do not compete with them commercially. So it is to our advantage to have the Columbia Airport expand and give people in our area the opportunity to be able to travel without going to St. Louis or Kansas City. I've moved all my travel there now. It took me a while to do it, but I've moved it there just because of the convenience. They treat you right. You can get in and out. Typically is a little bit more expensive, but the convenience factor is so great. So we as a city knew that they were looking at some of those. They had approached other cities around them to put money into a pool to try to entice some airlines into the area. So we as a city committed $50,000 to that initiative on behalf of the citizens of Jefferson City because of the convenience factor. So the Charlotte run, the Arizona, I know they have looked at a couple other markets. Yep. We encourage, and we're so excited about the announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ron Fitzwater, Mayor of Jefferson City, with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Ron, before we let you get out of here, what is the status of a developer for the proposed new hotel, conference center, parking garage project in downtown Jefferson City?
We're excited about the project. We put together a very tight timetable, but we brought in professionals to help us move through the steps. The next step on that process is to hire a master developer that'll come in and help us begin to put the pieces together. We've got 2 big studies that we need to update. One is a market feasibility study on the hotel side of it to tell us exactly what we need for this marketplace. The second piece is a parking study to upgrade our parking study of how many parking spots do we need in that site, what is the conference center going to demand? Was the hotel going to demand? So we need a master developer to help us kind of pull those pieces together. So we had two very legitimate proposals presented to a work group that we had put together that's run by JC Regional Economic Partnership. They have been our partner in this. And there was a unanimous recommendation of one of the master developers. It's a company called Garfield Public Private out of Texas. It unanimously came out of the admin committee, and now it's going to council tonight for a final vote. Hopefully we're going to be successful, and that'll begin the process of putting the very complicated pieces together. But I'm really excited about tonight. Council has been great to work with. A lot of questions, and that's what we need to have, but we need to begin the process. So I hope tonight's going to be exciting and positive.
gentlemen. Marsh, Stephanie Bell, Randy Tobler off. 7:25-ish, and the question hanging in the air, ladies and gentlemen, what is hot with Hannah?
Well, before I launch into what's hot with Hannah that we're actually early for, I have to kill time since I'm not used to having this much free time to tell my story.
Yeah, that's right. Millie Fawn probably brushing her teeth, so we should give it about 30 seconds so she can catch the entire what's hot with Hannah.
Yes, we got a great text from listener Jack at 874-9390. We were just talking to Jefferson City Mayor Ron Fitzwater before the break, and he was talking about, that conference center that is hopefully coming to Jeff City. And Jack says, I would have bet an Olive Garden would be in Jefferson City before a conference center, LOL. I thought that was funny because, of course, that's like the longest running joke that I'm aware of in Jefferson City.
It's the bellwether.
Oh, yeah. Anytime there's new construction happening in Jeff City, it seems like the rumor starts again that they're getting an Olive Garden, and it never turns out to be true. So maybe someday, Jack, maybe one day we will see an Olive Garden in Jefferson City, but that day is not today or anytime soon that I'm aware
All right.
of. Anyway, to launch into what's hot with Hannah, Fox Business is reporting on a study that was done by Zillow, which, of course, is one of these online platforms where folks can go to look at houses that are currently on the market. I believe they recently have launched into advertising like apartments and houses that are for rent as well. Mm-hmm. But Zillow did a study on where Gen Z is moving. Gen Z, even at the youngest end, they're adults now. Breaking news. The youngest members of Gen Z are, around 20 years old right now. I, of course, fall into the Gen Z category. But do you have any guesses, John, as to the number one state that adult Gen Z folks are, moving to? Any guesses?
I don't know. Florida.
Mike?
Texas.
Oh, yeah. So it is Texas. Texas was by and far the number one state that saw the most growth among Gen Z. There was over 76,000 Gen Zers. We need to come up with an easier to say name for Gen Z. Gen Z, over 76,000 of them moved to Texas in 2022. And the second and third states are California and Florida. Basically, the folks from Zillow are saying that when you're younger, it's easier to move somewhere that's more expensive. And then when you get a little older in life and decide to settle down and maybe start a family, you're looking for things that are more affordable. And that's maybe when you move back to a cheaper state.
I'm guessing Texas has a lot to do with Austin.
Yeah. Texas also,
which is a sanctuary city for LGBT.
Oh boy, yeah.
It is.
It's hard to imagine Texas having a sanctuary city.
Austin is a blue dot,
That's
just like
true.
Columbia is in the middle of Missouri. It is in the middle of Texas.
Yeah,
but Zillow is saying that over 3/4 of respondents to this survey, they're renting in either California, Florida, or Texas. So 3/4 of the survey are renting in one of those three states. I thought that was pretty big. I don't plan on moving anywhere. I recently moved to the big city of California. I don't know if that counts. But I don't know. The median rental price in the U.S. is $1,300 right now.
Ouch.
That's crazy. I know I whine a lot about my $800 rent payment, but maybe I should just keep my mouth shut.
My son went to college in just outside of Austin in a suburb called Georgetown, Texas. Sure. So I'm pretty familiar with Austin. And right after he graduated, he moved out to L.A. And his rent was like $3,500 a month for a while. Living in L.A. Yeah. Then he moved back to Austin.
Did he have any roommates?
Yeah, he did. He had two guys went out there with him. They just, after they graduated, jumped in the car and headed out there. And he lived out there maybe 2.5 years and then made his way back to Austin and was there on and off for a couple years too. But Austin's become almost as high rent as California and actually continuing to mushroom. We'll see how long that lasts. But Austin's a great place to live if you're a young person.
Well, and the The Fox Business article also credits Texas for being one of the leading states in being able to develop affordable housing, and more rentals and things like that. So
no income tax either. If you happen to be making some money,
there you go.
It's pretty handy, especially compared to LA or California.
Oh yeah.
I have a friend's son and family who is in with us. We'll be checking in with Callaway County State Representative Jim Schulte a little after 8, about 8:10 this morning. Actually doing some bills, we understand from Jim, regarding border security and how that applies to Missouri, and also some bills about, one of them about celebratory gunfire that got some traction yesterday at the State House. Big story, and Mike had the duty yesterday afternoon. I guess what? Changing of the guard in Mizzou's athletic department.
It was a shocker, I think, is the best way to describe it. I guess you'd have to be a real insider not to have been shocked. I think most of the public was shocked that Mizzou athletic director Desiree Reed-Francois is going to be introduced as the new athletic director at the University of Arizona next week. So she's gone, and we're looking for a new athletic director at MU.
I know when this broke yesterday, folks who are familiar with Cousin Andy from a couple years ago, Andy Humphrey from our sister station, KTGR, his desk is right next to mine. And we were chatting about this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden he goes, "Oh my gosh, that was shocking." And we all were kind of stunned a little bit by the news because she hadn't been here very long.
3 years, which is interesting. That's about right for her. She's moved a lot. It didn't seem, I was a little surprised to hear it was almost 3 years. It doesn't seem that long. But what's interesting, and there's a ton of speculation going on right now, is why? Why would she leave? She's on top of the world here, apparently. The sports programs are, certainly football and fundraising, and there seems to be just this big wave of positiveness coming out of MU sports.
They just got the biggest donation ever. What was that, 60 mil?
62. The basketball team is, hopefully this is a one-off mess for them right now that'll get fixed next year. But basically, I think she's regarded as a state-of-the-art elite athletic director, and she's leaving suddenly, and not for a pay increase, and not for a more. She's leaving the SEC for less money. It's like, what is going on? Now it's speculation.
It is interesting because, we've watched this, over the years as longtime Mizzou fans. Think about names going way back, like Joe Castiglione and Mr. Sturck and all these guys. But this really came out of, you want a sports pun, left field for sure.
Well, and, the cesspool that is Twitter or X, whichever you call it, we were talking about the speculation, and one Twitter user pointed out, coming off of a super great football season, the biggest donation in the program's history, all these positive things, and then all of a sudden the board of curators announced, was it last week, that they're going to have this oversight committee or whatever it's called. I'm not real well versed on the specifics, but speculation that maybe that was why she left.
That's the most, that's the general consensus at the moment, subject to change, I would think. But on early in February, the board of curators announced that they were forming this 4-member committee called the Mizzou Intercollegiate Athletic Special Committee to oversee the athletic department. So there is speculation that that's some meddling by the board of curators into what would be the job of an independent athletic director, or independent is probably the wrong word, because that's not some formality. That's just, I think if you're a really successful athletic director, you need some freedom to do your job and make the kind of decisions you need to do, perhaps without, I don't know if I'd want to call it interference, but without new and fresh oversight of your finances. I think I pulled a piece out of that meeting of what exactly this 4-member committee made up of curators would do. And their words is to obtain, monitor, and gather all information the committee deems necessary to assess progress of athletic funding efforts and the results of funding. So that's oversight of the athletic director, and you can't blame the speculation when 2 weeks later she's suddenly gone for what would appear at best to be a lateral move. It's not even a lateral move.
Well, I think back to when Jim Sturck moved on after 4 or 5 years at the university, and and he was a guy who hired Coach Drink, and he hired Conzo Martin and all that. And it was there was a lot of speculation surrounding his move to leave the university as well.
Yeah, my recollection is that Moon Choi decided we need to go in a different direction with a more, I like the word elite, in this modern world of very rapidly changing world of college athletics. And then Desiree certainly fit that bill, and she came in with a bang. I also think that she stepped on a lot of toes getting this job done, and I'm not sure inside of the Mizzou athletic department she was the most popular person. Not to say that that's meaningful or even fair. Anybody who's going to be a change agent, which she clearly was, is going to step on some toes. But the bottom line is, whatever the reason, and I suspect it has something to do with both of those things. But I would also caution, this needs some time to come out. We need some journalists on top of this telling us what's going on, because sometimes, I would say actually most of the time, things aren't always as they seem. You know what I mean? It's like there's what's apparent and what we think, and then there's usually a story that fits the narrative a lot better than what we currently have, and I'm not sure we really have the information we need yet to fill that narrative out.
Well, listener Brad is kind of telling us very nicely that we need to stop speculating, because it could be as simple as she's going back home. You know, she went to law school in Arizona, so maybe it's just as simple as she wants to return to her alma mater.
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
You're talking about somebody who's done nothing but climb up a career ladder rapidly and aggressively for the last almost 2 decades, and to get herself into the 7-figure salary range and on top of the world here, and wants to go back and live at her alma mater. I guess that's speculation also.
Well, and again,
I remember when she first came in, and there was behind the scenes a lot of shakeup with some senior assistants in the athletic department who were not only moved down the chain of command, but were moved to different departments in the university. So, heck, we think back when Jim Sturck left. I mean, remember when he got into it with the South Carolina women's basketball coach, Don Staley, and all the allegations of, promoting the negative environment and catcalling and all that, and it ended up in a lawsuit, didn't it?
Yeah, a little one.
just a little one.
But Desiree is a star, right? She is a star in this field, I think, nationwide. I think clearly she is regarded as an elite athletic director, and we just lost her. And there needs to be some explanation for that, I think.
Didn't she come out of UNLV?
Yes, and several places before that. And she has, as I said, she's been a star everywhere, and she was a star here.
Well, and our friend Andy Humphrey, again, was saying yesterday that it's not a great look for Mizzou that we're yet again losing an athletic director to a job that has lesser pay and overall kind of looks like a worse gig than what they might have had at Mizzou. So, something internally, is maybe going on that needs to be addressed, or else we're going to keep having the same problem.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Moon Choi pulls out, what rabbit he pulls out of the hat, because now also the elephant in the room is what type of athletic director are we going to be able to recruit who now has a 4-person advisory board riding herd over their decisions and their management and leadership of the operation. It'll be interesting. Now, knowing Moon Choi, I'm optimistic. I think he does pull a rabbit out of his hat. Perhaps this gets explained away as, hey, if you have top people, if you have great people, you're going to lose them. That's a typical thing in all the sports over there, right? So maybe he comes up with a great replacement. I hope he does.
Well, and she starts in her new role at Arizona, like March 4th.
She's gone.
Yeah, it's just a couple weeks basically. So they're gonna have to figure something out pretty quickly.
I think they've named an interim, and I think they'll function just fine. The management structure is in place there. That's an enormous operation, managing an enormous amount of money and activities, and with a lot of responsibility. So they can go without that type of leadership for a while he does a search and finds who he wants to find as a replacement. And remember, he came up with her, and nobody knew who she was when she came in. And there was a lot of eyebrows raised also. A female athletic director coming in, that's going to raise eyebrows. Sturck out, in comes this person. So we'll see what he does next time.
Well, it's interesting. We were reading the stories, and as Cousin Andy reported that Arizona not in the best shape. The athletics there won
Yikes.
from a win-loss record, but from the last guy, the last AD got fired over financial challenges.
Correct. They just fired the last guy and they're in debt.
A lot of debt, like $100 million plus in debt, right?
Yep, and moving conferences. So
Ugh.
so they it's probably a coup for them, and I guess we're going to have to.
That's right. They're jumping to Big 12, aren't they?
Yeah. So it will remain to be seen what it is for us.
Man, the texter's blowing up.
Yeah,
Lots of people weighing in this morning. Lots to say about Mizzou. Lots of very pessimistic things about Mizzou leadership coming in on 874-9390. I think so. I think as Mizzou fans, we're just used to kind of getting our hearts broken a little bit.
Well, it was one of those kinds of stories that sure caught all of us by surprise when it catches our on-point sports guys on the Tiger by surprise. It came in unexpectedly.
Yeah, and I know one of the things that Desiree was working on or had gotten accomplished was lowering concession prices at Mizzou sporting events to basically try to draw more of a crowd.
Well,
I really hope that continues because that'd be cool.
Well, they have to address the game day experience. It had gotten pretty bad, and she was. I mean, those are the types of things that an athletic director does. There's just constant improvements that needs to be done all the time, and that's I think how they're just the massive build out that's going on there. Now we're talking about a ballpark village type situation on the north end soon. And now with $62 million, $50 million coming in for the project, she was making enormous progress, the type of progress that you just don't see, generational type progress. That's what's so just staggering about. Then you wake up one day and she's just gone.
Well, you wonder if the success of the Missouri Tiger football team played into it because you cycle that back into the big bucks that come in for TV revenues. And
well, let's hope our sports journalists, our local
radio tower and transmitter in Jasper, Alabama, wasn't there anymore. Brett Elmore is the GM of WJLX, said the landscaper had been doing a cleanup of the transmitter property when the crew discovered the tower was gone.
Oh.
All the equipment had been stolen out of the shed. The wires to the tower had been cut at the site. Said he was still shocked the tower, which had been in place since the 1950s, was no longer standing. It knocked the AM station off the air. They petitioned the FCC to get a waiver to continue to broadcast on the FM side. And the station said, the FCC boys said, nope, FM translators are prohibited from operating when the AM primary is off the air. And he said the station would be in a jam even if it would be found. It will be in pieces and we will have to rebuild it. The word is they have not found it. Brings up a story of our old boss TR here at Zimmer when he worked at a non-Zimmer station. It was his day off. He got a call by the guy on the air, said, you need to get here now. He got there. The tower was laying on the ground. The farmer mowing hay hooked a guy wire with his tractor, and down came the tower. Now we know the rest of that story, which is not one you want to know the rest of.
You know, for anyone that might not be aware, those radio towers, especially the really big ones, are a whole lot of dollars. They are very expensive. So I can't imagine just finding your tower, the whole thing is missing.
Well, if I was writing a book on it, I would remember Red Elmore from Jasper, Alabama. It's like, you can't make that up.
Right.
Well, it's one of those kind of deals, you know, it's the price of doing business. But, you know, there's those stories you hear anecdotally. Thank goodness from those of us who've never experienced that in the radio biz. But, boy, doesn't take much for something to come down. I mean, and that's why the FAA is so on top of it. If we have a transmitter light bulb on any positions on any of our towers, we are required to notify them yesterday.
And usually there's fences now around anything where you could possibly touch a guide wire.
Well, you can't get to the towers proper, but usually the guy wires are outside the
they're anchored, aren't they? Yeah, anchored in the ground. Although that's an interesting story. I do know what you're talking about or have seen those. They're huge, big anchors, though, for a big one. I mean, big anchors, big anchor bolts cemented down into the ground.
Yeah, go look at some of the big TV towers and some of those in mid-Missouri. So
we ought to forward this story to our engineers, get their take on it.
Give them the shivers.
Yeah, well, Mike Mayfield, our chief engineer, I'm sure he's been in radio a while himself, and I'm sure he's got some stories there as well. A lot coming up, getting busy over at the State House, and as we heard last night at the Cole County Lincoln Days, had a lot of folks in attendance. Both folks running for statewide office and our local folks, Callaway County State Rep Jim Schulte, coming in to join us today as we talk about some action over in the House. They're trying to move ahead, even though we still understand that there's a filibuster going on in the Missouri State Senate this morning with the Dems pushing things in that direction to see where that's all going to go before the smoke clears at the State House. And it is, you know, price of doing business, but boy, as Mike can relate, it's been a crazy tough year over there already.
Yeah, I think is the subject still IP reform? I'm sure it is, right? And
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that continues on and the whole debate about it, and the House folks are quick to point out that, hey, we did our due diligence and passed an IP bill last time around, and it got over to the Senate Callaway County State Representative Jim Schulte. Jim, we had a great time last night, Cole County Lincoln Days, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a great turnout. It was good to see everybody and a lot of interesting people.
I know.
Well, go ahead.
I want to commend Hannah. I mean, she was there through the whole thing, and then she's the one coming the farthest and making it to work this morning. So kudos to you, Hannah.
Well, thank you, Jim. But I also was a little behind this morning. And I think John probably still came in a lot earlier than I did.
So it goes, but I'm a lot closer than you are, too. So
No, I know Randy last night, Jim, did he really come up and ask you about bacon?
Yes, he did.
Oh, my gosh. Of course, at the governor's prayer breakfast, Hauswirth and Randy could not stop talking about the smell of bacon that was, affecting their ability to be good broadcasters. And State Rep Schulte apparently saved the day. He swooped in and brought them some bacon.
Well, I'd heard them talking about it on my way in when I was driving into into town, and then when I got on the air, they kept talking about it, and I thought, man, these guys are having like bacon withdrawal or something. I have to help them out.
So the retired state command sergeant major from the Missouri National Guard, simply looking after your troops, right?
That's it, taking care of our people.
Put them in the chow line ahead of you and let them go down that road.
It's a good man right there.
Talk to us a little bit about a bill that was worked on yesterday at the state capitol on the House side that has some real implications a lot bigger than Missouri.
Yeah, it came out of committee yesterday. There were 3 separate bills that we consolidated into one dealing with illegal immigrants. And hopefully it gets through, but what it does is it gives our local law enforcement teeth to do something. If they stop someone for a traffic violation or whatever, and then through probable cause it leads to the fact that they're here illegally, not people that have registered and come through the border legitimately. These are people that have illegally crossed into the country. It puts them on a felony charge status so that they can be arrested, charged, and either jailed or deported.
The way we understood it from what we heard real early on, it kind of mirrors some of the things that are in the Texas bill.
It is. Several of our reps went down to Texas last September and spent the several days touring the border, talking to Texas legislators, and Texas had this bill, and so our guys brought them back and looked at how they would impact Missouri and submitted them for review and legislative review and a vote. So it came through committee, Homeland Security Committee, last week, and then again yesterday. So hopefully it gets some traction and helps out.
State Representative from Callaway County, Jim Schulte, with us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
John, thank you so much, Representative. We appreciate you tuning in. I know that a lot of issues are going on in the General Assembly. We've had an overnight filibuster that is still going on. Mary Elizabeth Coleman literally was trying to figure out if she could get some new clothes on because she's apparently been in her old clothes all day and all night because of the filibuster going on the Senate floor by the Democrats. I want to talk about a topic that came up yesterday. Very important, very little attention until the program yesterday, and it deals with a project that goes right through your district, I-70. $2.8 billion project, Representative. You and I have talked many times about it. That'll start between Kingdom City and Columbia. Huge. They're going to start that here in a couple of months. But Taylor Burks, who's running for Congress, pointed out here on this program yesterday that on these service roads between specifically Boone and Callaway counties, these roads will go for a couple miles and then run out, literally. We saw what happened with the as he called it, a debacle Friday night on the interstate. People stuck out there. What's your take? Can the legislature, can Congress come up with some money to basically extend those surface roads that go right through your district? Because right now they run out.
Right, and some of that's the old Highway 40 and other things that when they built the interstate, there wasn't funding to continue that. Some of these roads, they run up to a major creek, and then in order to extend them on, you've got to spend a lot of money on bridges and infrastructure that's just not there. And there just hasn't been a taste for doing that. So I don't know how, as tight as this was to get it through and get it passed, I don't know how we would come up with even more money, because frankly, the big expense on all these is the bridges. Repaving a road is not a huge deal. It's expensive, but not like having to build all the overpasses and other things to connect it.
And there are a couple creeks that go right through there.
Right. You got Cedar Creek there, and I think that the service road stops at Cedar Creek. That's at the Boone-Callaway line, and there's a couple others, I believe, too, on the Boone County side that I know there's a couple times when I tried to get around to Hatton or Millersburg and didn't know my way around and found out real quick that I wasn't going to get through that way and had to turn around and go back.
Jim, what's the latest on the Grain Belt Express and its impact on Callaway County?
I honestly don't know. There are some bills out there that they're looking at, and I haven't heard an update anytime recently about that.
So it's a couple years out, and then it just disappears. I'm wondering where it's held up at.
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance from area farmers up in that region. There's a huge question about whether or not they can use eminent domain to take property. The Farm Bureau and the Cattlemen's Association and a few other associations are pushing back against it. So we'll see.
Okay.
I think maybe they're just laying low right now and biding their time to see if they can find a new opening to approach.
Does its arrival, does it dovetail or intersect with the wind farms issue in Callaway County, or is it two totally separate things?
I think they're all connected ultimately. The movement for green energy and the things that they're trying to do, they've got huge federal backing and federal funding, which is why they even exist. If it wasn't for federal money, none of these projects would get off the ground.
I know, Jim, you've told us when we've talked to you before about some of those solar farms and alternative energy operations, especially in Callaway County. There's even folks on both sides. There's a couple of schools of thought. There's people out there saying, we don't want this stuff. It'll ruin the quality of our rural life. And then others say, man, this is something I could set my kids up for life with.
Well, and that's true. And I don't call them solar farms because they're not farms. They're a commercial enterprise that generates electricity. They're just going on to farmland. They're trying to call them farms so that they can keep the tax base at an agricultural level, and we're fighting hard not to let that happen because so many other things happen when you do that. You can tax them as agriculture because that's agriculture land, but what people aren't thinking about is how much revenue you lose through the crops, the fertilizer, the seed, the diesel fuel, the maintenance of equipment, the implement dealers, and all those jobs that are connected to that would go away. And if you dry that up, your county loses revenue, and now you're affecting fire departments and sheriff's departments and roads and bridges, and it just evaporates the revenue stream that keeps all those functions we expect. And I don't like paying taxes, but I sure like knowing that there's going to be an ambulance coming when I call one, or if I call the fire department, they're going to show up and fight a fire. So there are just certain things we have to have to maintain that. And real quick I'm not an anti-solar person. The landowners have a right to do what they want with their own land, and I respect that. And these people are offering them sweet deals. I mean, several of the farmers in my district they're in their 70s, and they don't have family members to carry on the tradition, but they can get a 20 or 30-year lease that's going to pay them 2 or 3 times more than they make farming. That's a pretty good retirement plan for somebody that's worked all their life. And so I can't fault them for that and what they're being offered. my big opposition is that the rest of us should not be funding that with our tax dollars.
Jim, before we let you out of here, we heard from House Speaker Dean Plocker last night at Cole County Lincoln Days, and he was very vehement about you guys are not the sticking point when it comes to initiative petition reform.
Well, that's true. We passed it last year out of the House. It was our number one priority when we started the session last year, and we got it passed and sent to the House and are sent to the Senate, and they camped out on it. And then, like 2 weeks before session ended, they sent us their modified version. We went ahead and approved it and sent it back to them, and then they filibustered the last 2 days of the session, and it died there. So we're back in the same boat this year and trying to get it rolling.
What do you think's going to happen in the State House between now and break?
Well, we have got a lot of bills in the House that are moving. There's over 200 that have been through committees and are getting ready to go to votes, and that number may be even higher now. Committees have been working hard and vetting and approving things to pass. Again, it's hard to
stay
deal
tuned
with
in
the
other
Senate
words,
and see what that's going to happen and what it's going to do. We're getting a pretty
Producer Hannah, Brian Hauswirth. Checking the markets, looks like the S&P 500 futures moved a little lower. Market coming off first losing week in more than a month. S&P slid 0.3%. NASDAQ down 0.4, and follows kind of what tracked along last time as a losing week on Wall Street. And Federal Reserve may not begin cutting the interest rates as soon as some folks had hoped, or by as much as some of the market players expected. And it was like when we saw the guy, the Fed chairman, on 60 Minutes the other night. He said it wasn't going to happen in March, and now it doesn't look like it's going to happen in May. So with your skyrocketing interest rates and all, it doesn't bode well, but we'll see what happens. I know Capital One Financial was talking about buying Discover Financial, and that's a
big old deal.
That's a real big deal. So we'll see where this all goes. It was worth what, $30-some billion or something like that.
Lots of dollars.
Off to the race. Kind of hard for some of us to relate when you start reporting, well, they've got a spare $35.5 billion laying around to acquire one of their competitors. But gosh, I guess hats off to you if you can swing it. But then we cycle back into the whole discussion about Bidenomics and where this is all headed from here. So there.
Yeah. And, the second that gas prices start to come down a little bit, Biden economics are working. Now that prices are going back up, I haven't heard anything.
Oh, I saw one kind of an item on the stock reports, kind of a peripheral thing. The monitor TV I'm looking at here in the control room says Vizio on it, and that's kind of Walmart's house brand, and they just announced that they're going to come up with $2.5 billion to buy Vizio outright at Walmart. So I think they beat their quarterly earnings and some revenue expectations at Wally World as well. So that's kind of interesting. Personally, I thought it was a house brand, wholly owned and operated, but apparently not.
Man, is this just the season of massive business deals? Is that what's happening?
I don't know so much of that, but boy, you talk about anything tech and the electronic side of the industry with the CES show and all that stuff, that swings right along. And we've seen tech, whether it's computer tech or electronics and entertainment tech, really kind of driving the positive signs in the economy.
Yeah, and keep an eye on Apple stocks when those fancy goggles that Jennifer brought in, Jennifer Bukowski, that basically turn your surroundings into one giant computer screen.
That's right. Sends you into the Metaplex.
Curious to see how those, sell once they hit the market in a more widespread type of way.
Well, again, it's interesting to watch as you can relate as well as anybody with Apple products about how when they first come on the market, they're at those hyper artificially inflated price points. And then as they get into later iterations of them, they come down to something, marginally affordable for the general public. Think back to iPads.
Yeah, I mean, those came out when I was a kid, so I kind of remember the release of those. And it's kind of funny, too. One of the things that were hot when I was growing up was the mini laptops.
Yeah. The notebook computers, they call them.
Yeah, they were maybe 10 inches or so, and now everyone wants bigger and better. I think my iPhone is about the size of that little laptop I had as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Carried around in your pocket.
Yes.
Well, it is interesting to see where that all goes. And Hey, Mike Murphy, ComoBuzz.com, in with us this morning. Mike, referencing the LGBTQ vote and the wording of it all last night at the Columbia City Council meeting, I guess the over picture is, what's this mean for the average person in Columbia? Anything?
It means nothing to anybody. That's what, so Brian and I, when we opened this morning, we were talking about, there's 100+ people there, and so few of them, they talked, and so few of them seemed to have any grasp of what the ordinance really was. They're there to, protect their rights and sound off about how they feel about these ordinance or these laws that came out of Jeff City. But it means absolutely nothing to anybody. And what's just happening right now is I'm looking at the TV here in the studio here, and there's a crawler on there that says that this city's 6-1 vote ensures safeguards for gender care. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't do anything even close to that. The state, the General Assembly banned the use of puberty blockers and hormone treatments for treating gender dysphoria issues in Missouri. It banned them. And absolutely nothing has changed. They are still banned. There's no practitioner in Columbia or anywhere else in Missouri who would dare, I wouldn't think, they would risk losing their license if they provide that health care. And it's not city police who would enforce this. It'd be the attorney general or somebody like that. So all the city council did last night was they made this big statement and a big production because they were urged to do it. They said they think this is wrong. They support the LGBT community in thinking this is wrong. And they're going to give it the lowest priority. If they're ever called upon to enforce anything, it would be a low priority to them. Well, they're never going to be called upon to enforce anything for the most part anyway. So this is just a statement that means absolutely nothing to anybody other than perhaps if you're part of this LGBTQ community and you wanted this statement from your government, you got that. But don't make the mistake, like I think the TV station is making here, that thinks it somehow affects this gender-affirming care anywhere in Missouri. It doesn't. It doesn't change anything.
Does the way the ordinance reads in Kansas City with the magic word of sanctuary city in it carry any more weight than Columbia's does?
It might. I don't think so. If I believe that if it did, the attorney general would be in there fixing it. He'd sue him. I think I can't say for certain, but I think it's more just like a proclamation of support. And really, that's all this is. Now, it is an ordinance. It's written as an ordinance and it's voted into the Columbia Code of Ordinances, but nowhere in it does it say it will do anything. And in fact, it goes out of its way to lead in every paragraph saying, as otherwise allowed by law or prohibited by law. It's messing around zero with any state law. And I'm surprised that people are misunderstanding that, because that's very much the entire initiative from the get-go. And they have said in their defense on city council over and over again that we're not really impacting any law or changing anything. We're just telling you what we think for what it's worth. And that's really all this is. And I think people who are, we're seeing on our texter and some feedback we're getting, think it's something different than that. And it really just isn't. These treatments are now, or they will be, illegal in Missouri. And regardless of anything the Columbia City Council did, it has absolutely no impact on that state law.
That's exactly right, John and Mike. And Mike said it best. It's more symbolic, but nonetheless, it is important. But what I'm really urging the listeners to do is take a look, and I'll have an updated story after the 9 o'clock news, but I linked to the 4-page bill, folks. It's not that hard to read, 4 pages. And Mike, what stuck out to me is you had people on both sides last night that were at that podium. They had not read the bill. I know they hadn't read the bill because I could tell they didn't know, in a couple cases, didn't know what was even in it. What it is more than anything else is, I think this is the sentence that is the key. And some of them actually said it. Some of them did read it. A lot of them didn't. This is the key here, John. Quote, the proposal says the city of Columbia, quote, recognizes the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to being a competitive employer, building a strong local economy, and enriching the community to be better than the sum of its parts, as well as recognizing LGBTQ people have long contributed to the rich history and social fabric of Columbia and this country." End of quote. That is straight out of the ordinance. That is straight on the bill. And we very well, even though this is more symbolic, the Attorney General has told us on the record he's going to, or at least he said that previously, he'll challenge it in court, so maybe he will. But that's what it is. And it's written, as Mike has said, to not conflict or break state laws, just to ignore them. Worth repeating again, just to ignore them. But nonetheless, that could be an issue with the AG.
The whole angle that I kind of took away from it, and it confused the heck out of me. But I think the whole line about the ordinance saying prosecution against anyone providing gender-affirming health care is the lowest priority for law enforcement in the city of Columbia. So that just sort of adds to the, okay, we're glad you weighed in, but, right?
Yeah, they have that option. I mean, that's what's going to annoy some people the worst, is they're making a decision like that. And as we talked about a little earlier, though, first of all, the city is involved like zero in any enforcement of this type of thing.
That's right.
There just are. That's a practical reality. But local law enforcement people make decisions about what they're going to prioritize all the time. We don't prioritize in Columbia people who have expired plates, right? So this is just the city council giving instruction to staff. If there is any meat to this at all, other than the proclamations, it's instructions, it's a directive that we're not going to prosecute any of these things, number one. And number two, if we're forced to somehow by law, it will be the lowest priority among the things as we prioritize what we need to do today. So they're basically, I've used the word, what they're doing, this is a bunch of rhetoric that basically is saying we're going to ignore this law, but we're not doing anything anyway. So, they've jumped in and they're in the middle of the debate now, which is, you can question the wisdom of doing that or not. But really, they're just pushing back based on some, and obviously it's important to a bunch of citizens. They all showed up last night. And this is just city council expressing its disapproval with the laws while doing absolutely nothing about it.
And it's fair to say, too, that I know people have said, this should not be a priority. We've had several listeners say that. I haven't seen all the texts, but I've heard you guys read them. Again, folks, it's newsworthy when you have people that show up and this is their priority. And there were quite a few opponents as well last night. A lot more supporters of this from the LGBT community and Mizzou students. A lot of Mizzou students there as well. But they were literally lined up out the door. Two quick things, Mike and John, that stick out, Hannah, as well to me that are important here. Number one, DeCarlin Seawood, the city manager, did not make a recommendation on this. He normally does in his packets, his staff, or he does. They did not. So he really, for lack of a better term, punted. He let the council handle this. And this was rewritten. This was not the same ordinance that the Mizzou Democratic Socialists of America addressed. But I also should point out that there was a listener. I know she listens to us because I remember her calling. Her name is Bonnie, and she's a grandmother here, and she testified last night. And she flat out told Roy Lovelady to his face, "You are supposed to be representing me," and basically said, "You're not representing me." And she said her grandchildren, this is a direct quote here, are afraid to go to the restroom at school, and that no child should have to fear going to the restroom. And she paused for a second, but she was very passionate about what she said. Tanya Heath also spoke. Waterman just doesn't feel the councilman from the 5th Ward, it doesn't feel like it's necessary, but he was really outnumbered on this. And we'll see what happens. And by the way, a lot of the people that want to recall Nick Knoth were on the side he voted on last night. I don't know if Mike caught that or not, but he basically said we got to do this. So just a lot of things at play, and again, it could be tied up in court before too long.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it. I think it's going to just go away and not be much of anything. Let's keep in mind that it's interesting how it fall along some religious lines, and the person, I heard that exchange with Roy Lovelady. Roy Lovelady, the city council person from the 3rd Ward, was very much behind pushing this through, making it an ordinance. If people don't know, Roy's a prominent member of the Columbia LGBTQ community, also a renowned drag performer, he's worn that on his sleeve. Everybody knows he talks about it openly, or it's just out there. And he was a real champion of getting this through, which, that's important because that gives council the real backbone, not that they needed it to make this happen. So that person was talking, that person who was lobbying Roy
Mike Murphy, producer Hannah, Brian Hauswirth in with us, doing a little leftovers, and coming up this weekend at the Capitol Mall in Jefferson City, the HBA Homeshow. Nick Hasselog from Hasselog Landscaping and Design in with us. Wow, another year, the home show is back upon us.
Yes, sir, another one. This is our 24th home show now.
24?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the Capitol Mall.
I hate to be that guy, but that's longer than I've been alive, gentlemen. That's pretty cool.
I think you have a family member with a connection to this company as well, don't you?
I do. Maybe a little brother.
Well, Nick, tell us about the HBA Home Show. First, about the organization, the Home Builders Association here in mid-Missouri, but especially the Home Show, a way to showcase everything you guys and your colleagues do.
Yes, sir. So the HBA of Central Missouri is made up of all local builders or just remodelers, things like that serve the Central Missouri area. The home show is going to be this weekend out of the Capitol Mall, Friday and Saturday. Friday is from noon to 6:30, with Saturday being 10 to 5. So really, if anybody has a current or future project they're looking to do or get ideas for, we're going to have a really good showing this year. We've actually sold up. All our vendor spots are gone, so there's no more room for anybody to get in there. So besides people to come out, check out, get some ideas, we got some really cool things going. So if, like I said, if you got any future projects coming up, come out and take a look and get some ideas.
Well, it's one of those kind of deals, too, for we know from talking to you guys in the HBA, whether you're on the landscaping side or you're a contractor or, heck, a lumber yard, somebody doing supplies. It was a tough few years there not that long ago, wasn't it?
Correct. Yeah, it was. Luckily, a lot of us got through and kept our head down. But, it was kind of difficult getting a lot of things in on time and stuff like that, and kind of prolonged some projects, delayed things, and then just the aspect of getting in homes as well. So, but luckily, I think we've gotten past that, and we've got a bright future ahead. Well,
I know from talking to folks who are in your line of work, even during the tail end of the pandemic and all, and the challenges on supply issues. I mean, getting parts for your dump truck or your mowers and all was a real challenge, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it kind of made things difficult to schedule, stay on track. So that's where a lot of most people you talk to are kind of still backed up from that with the workload. So really, we do appreciate our being patient with our schedules and time frames on projects as well.
Talk to us about some of the things folks will see if they go by the HBA Home Show. There's a lot of hands-on stuff to see and some really cool new product now, isn't there?
Yes, sir. So anything really building or remodel related, whether you're, again, doing a remodel or a brand new build, indoor, outdoor, you got windows, doors, flooring, roofing, siding, really, landscaping and various other items you'll need to pick from for your home.
There's some cool prizes again this year, we understand, right?
Yes, sir. There's always the raffle with giveaway prizes every hour. So you don't need to be present to win. Just stop by the HBA booth, pick up some raffle tickets, and drop your name in.
So, my husband and I were looking to purchase our first home, hopefully this spring or summer. And I imagine we're going to have some renovation projects when that day finally comes. So basically, I could drag him to the HBA Home Show and we could get all sorts of ideas and get all sorts of contacts for when the time comes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Of course. Yep.
Oh, boy. I need to call him.
Yep. Drag him out there. Every wing of the mall is going to be full. A lot of stuff to see. There's going to be a lot of cool displays, a lot of booths, and a lot of people to talk to.
The way it's gotten so specialized, you think about, contractors would handle your house and all that from the design side all the way out to, custom home or a spec home or whatever. But now, even with the outdoor living environments and all, that's such a big part of the industry now, isn't it?
It is. And we did, you spoke of COVID earlier, we kind of noticed an increase and a pickup in those areas kind of during that and after the pandemic, whenever people decided they did like staying home. They created their own oasis in their own backyard. So it is becoming a very increasingly popular area to have. That's what we love that, because obviously that's what we specialize in. So, everybody wants their own kitchen, pool area or patio with a fire pit, just someplace to sit and enjoy themselves or with friends and family.
Well, and the more that side of the business grows, things become a little more affordable, and you have a whole lot more choices in materials with, stamped concrete and all those kinds of things, as opposed to the real high dollar things that were the only option before, right?
Correct. Yep. There's various different products that can meet pretty much any budget.
Well, give us particulars, the whens and the wheres, and the best part about it, it is free of charge.
Yes, sir, it is. Free admission, again, this Friday and Saturday, the Capitol Mall. Friday is from noon to 6:30, and Saturday from 10 to 5.
I'm bringing the honey-do list.
That's right.
Well, Nick, tell them to tell you that they heard it on the radio stations, and you can hook them up at the HBA Homeshow. What year is it again?
It's the 24th year of it.
Wow. HBA Homeshow this Friday and Saturday at Capitol Mall in Jefferson City. Nick Hauswirth in with us from Hauswirth Landscaping and Design. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Gary Nolan is on deck for us.